Hey Jeff, it's good to
Hi,
be with
Morgan.
you.
How are you?
Good. Lot of snow this week. Did you guys get a lot of snow in Atlanta?
Uh, well, a lot. We would put in quotation marks, I think less than an inch, but enough to keep us in the house with our family, with the young kids, not out on the roads, no
Derailed the
daycare,
family.
no preschool, no kindergarten. So I know you were battling some of the same issues.
Oh yeah, but we made it out on the other side
Here
to
we are.
close the distance together.
Yes, and let's close it.
Let's close it. Um, so yes, we talked about in family we trust. I really loved your sermon. It was really fun to listen to and brought back some memories from the 90s, so appreciated that.
Yes.
You covered a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, Morgan. I really appreciate that, and I have actually received a lot of really positive feedback about it, which is always gratifying. But I think it resonated, especially with folks who were kind of aware in the 80s and 90s of, with the kind of the family, a focus on the family, if you
Mhm.
will, that was so prevalent in our culture, especially in kind of the evangelical subculture. Um, and I think those of us that built kind of an idol of the family and this idea of what a family ought to be, and then could never live up to it.
Mhm.
I mean, frankly, my sermon on Sunday, if you ask me where did it come from, I'd say, well, years of therapy.
Fair.
That
Fair.
I had to spend a lot of time with a therapist going through what was legitimate expectations, what was not.
Mhm.
How had I um, tried to require people to live up to an ideal that was impossible? How did I expect myself to do that? And how that really harmed the family system that I was a part of, and how I'm going to make mistakes, as a parent and a husband, but I want to make new mistakes. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Don't redo the mistakes, learn from the
Yeah.
mistakes that have already happened, and then try to make some new mistakes. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I love it. I mean, I have to admit, I was a kiss dating goodbye gal, it was such a mess. And, um, the author actually recanted it.
Yes.
So
I
I
think
was
he
like,
can become an agnostic or
yeah, I think so.
atheist, I think. And, I like, and it's classic, right? It's like, we cannot, we need to find some moderation here. And going from one end of the spectrum, like, I can't
Mhm.
smooch before I'm married, to like, I don't believe in God anymore, is like, could we
Pretty
just
big.
find like some middle ground here and just like chill and like think through that these are complex questions. These relationships are complicated. Um,
Mhm.
Everybody's different. Like how we couple together, how we date, um, is different for different people. And
Um,
let's acknowledge that and not act like it's a cookie cutter life that we all need to fit into some box. Anyway, don't get me ranting.
Go ahead and rant. Um, yeah, no, I totally agree. And yeah, it's like when the standard is impossible to fit, people just let it go altogether.
Yeah, and I think like, and I think it's just, and I think I read part of the book enough to like I got the point of it, but I was like, dude, I'm looking to smooch. Like
No, this ain't
in
gonna
high
work for
school,
me.
I'm like, man, if I
This ain't
get
gonna
somebody to
work.
kiss me, that'd be great.
Gotta toss this one out.
Yeah, I wish I could kiss dating goodbye. I can't get a date.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, I was wondering, I mean, you really touched on so many different things, like the idolizing the spouse, the partner, like parent, child, and you talked about loving God and pursuing God more than we love and live for our families. But I wondered, is there anything, you only had 20 minutes. I was like, is there anything that you wanted to go into with the ways that we trust in our families that you didn't get time for?
Well, I think I could have gone down a lot of different rabbit holes. I think part of what I did not want to do, and I try not to do this in sermons, is I don't use it as kind of like, I try not to use it as like a self-therapy session where I'm like going to talk, because I feel like this is such a personal issue for me and my experience that I didn't want to like hear all my problems and like how I've struggled, and everybody's like, oh, this guy's really tied up with his in himself. Like, like, well, and so I try not to do that. I want to be as expansive as I could, to invite people to kind of wrestle with these ideas and questions, and relationships in their own way. Uh,
Mhm.
so I did not want to go get too specific for that reason. But I also wanted to be like vulnerable enough that like this is where my thinking has come from about relationships, when it comes to idolizing the family, how it can
Mhm.
really harm not just yourself, but the very family that you care about. And if you put too much weight on it, it just the system cannot hold it. It's not
Right.
meant to do that. And so thinking through that, and helping hopefully people unburden them from that expectation. Um,
Mhm.
and also I like the weirdness of the Bible and the families in it. Like we think,
Man.
I just, you know, I think in one service, I, I kind of gave four different sermons that were a little different each time. And at one of them I said, I went with the Abraham story, and I,
Mhm.
I realized I was preaching. I was like, I talked about, him trying to, you know, he was married to his half sister. They were barren for many years. Then he has Isaac, and then he almost kills him and sacrifices him. And and then I was like, it hit me as I was talking about. It. I was like, and I'm glossing over the whole thing with like having a son with like Ishmael, and you know, his mom, and all like all the other banana stuff that happens there. I
Right.
was like, oh, it gets way crazier than I'm giving it.
Yes. Those are just the highlights.
Yeah. And I think when you look at the Bible as it actually is, not as like a summary of what
Mhm.
you wish it was or what you think it is, like biblical family values or whatever, you get in there, you're like, whoa, these are very complicated. And let's acknowledge the complexity of our relationships, even in the Bible, and they're not that much different than us.
So true. And it's like, which families are you trying to emulate here?
Yeah.
The the Old Testament alone and then the New Testament.
Yeah, and I didn't even get into like I mean, Jesus's own mom is a pregnant, unwed woman who she's engaged to, and he tries to dump her. And only like a vision from God, prevents him from doing that. And we actually don't hear any more about him after. So who knows what happened there? We don't know.
Exactly.
And so I think like, and I was just, it's just so funny. And I just was reading in one of my Bible studies in Matthew 20, I think it was, where the sons of Zebedee, their mother is comes up to Jesus and is like, "Hey Jesus, could my two sons sit on your right and your left in the coming kingdom of God?" And I'm like, this meddling mother, like, get out, man.
Talk about a helicopter mom.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, man, it's all in there. There these are this is so relatable.
It
And how
is.
Jesus deals with it, I think, is really beautiful. And he says, well, are they willing to carry their cross? Are they willing to drink the cup I'm about to drink? And they're not initially, and longer on they'll find out that that cup is much different than they had expected.
Hmm. Wow. So good. So what if somebody was listening to the sermon and they were like, all right, you're talking to me. So how do I stop doing this idolization? Like if like people get their whole lives wrapped up with like their relationship with their kids or their parents or their siblings, like we just invest so much. So what if you do want to actually reprioritize in your life and um be able to put God as like your priority? What's your next step?
Yeah, yeah. So I think when things are going really well, it's pretty easy, right? When our relationships are working, when our kids are really well behaved, when our parents are communicating with us and we're communicating with them, we're being honest okay, that's great. And I think that's pretty easy. The
Mm,
the problem areas arise when people are difficult, when people aren't honest, when they're not kind, when they're not well behaved. Okay. So what do we do there? And I really feel like um, we need to see these problem areas, both with ourselves and others, as an opportunity to grow as followers of Christ and to really cultivate the virtues or what we might call the fruit of the spirit.
mm,
So I said, like, personally, when my kids make me angry, and they do often, I'd have to say, this is an opportunity for me to become a more patient person,
mm,
right? Which is very difficult. But I have to see that as, even they're making me frustrated and angry and I want to lash out, yell, or whatever, is this is an opportunity for me to become more patient.
mhm,
Um, when let's say with my wife, when I become frustrated, uh, that she's not doing what I want her to do or whatever, how is this an opportunity for me to show grace and maybe communicate my own desires, needs, whatever, with her in a way that's not angry, but just, hey, this is where I'm at, and could we talk about this? So many times the emotional piece of getting frustrated and angry takes over, and then
yeah,
it ends up making a bad situation worse. And I think we've all experienced that. So I try to say how, and I really get this from Marilyn Robinson in her book Gilead. She says, we should look at every person in every situation as if God is asking a question of us,
mm,
and to ask, what is God asking of me in this place, in this moment, through this person? And it's a question of vocation. How is God calling me to respond? And when I frame my family relationships with that question at the center, then that helps me be hopefully a more patient, kind, loving, generous, gracious person. Right. And then I have a long way to go, but I'm on that journey.
yeah, that's really good. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about that yesterday as I was playing for hour number whoever 3,
Oh,
4, I don't know. My
yeah.
daughter, she likes to play
What
a
were
lot.
you playing? Candyland?
No, she's like, well, we did do Candyland 16 times in 2 days. Let's
16? Do you
16.
need some other games? Do we need to?
No, that's the only one she wanted to play. It was a lot of Candyland. But this time we were playing Elsa and Anna, and it was a whole story, like big imagination on the 3-year-old. But um, I was getting so like just, oh, I should be doing other things. I don't want to play anymore. And then maybe the Holy Spirit was working on me, and I was like, maybe I should take this play opportunity to help teach her how to be a good person, a good, kind child. So we like made sure to like do good conflict resolution with her, Elsa and Anna, and their sisters. So I was like, look at me, I'm applying the
Also,
sermon,
just keep shooting me with cold blasts.
right? So I was trying to apply the sermon to
I'm so
my life.
glad.
Okay.
I'm so glad. And yeah, I just think, like, and the other thing is, like, I try to remind myself, like, well, I didn't have any kids till I was 40 years old. Okay. So I'm on the later end of the spectrum.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've noticed that people tell me a lot is it goes by so fast, right? The days are long, but the years are short, the cliche is.
Right.
Well, I've really tried to say, okay, it's so easy to act as if these moments will always occur. They'll just keep coming. But what I forget is I've got a kindergartner now, and we're not going backwards.
Yeah.
We're losing teeth, adult teeth are coming in, like, and all of a sudden I'm going, he's no longer a little boy, you know.
Yeah.
and if you don't pay attention, if you don't cherish those moments, you can't get them back, right?
True.
And so, and I like during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time, actually the past couple of days brought back, triggered those memories of just, I was just, constantly with a 1-year-old. But like during the pandemic, I tried to remind myself, hopefully we'll never have to do this again,
No,
but
no.
cherish these moments because you can't get them back,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm.
and take a lot of pictures.
Oh, we do. Too
But
much.
16 times at Candyland's a lot.
It is, yeah. Pray for us. We'll see how many we play tonight. But um, yeah, I also just wanted to say that I really loved your challenge to love our family members for the relationship and not just their roles, like what they could do for us. I thought that was important and just wanted to
Well,
affirm
thank
that.
you. Yeah, and I think maybe that's where I probably would have maybe explored more if I had more time. Um, because so many of us, and I think I want to be very careful how I say this. I think some where and I know you have a similar background as I do, kind of an evangelical kind of perspective
Hmm.
that we were raised in, and kind of we look at it a little differently probably now than we did for much of our lives. But like it was very role based. Women
Hmm.
ought to do this, act in this way. Men ought to be this way and act like that. And
Hmm.
children, right? And this goes back. I mean, this goes way back. I mean, if you read Aristotle's Politics, he goes through and he talks about, he says like the three most important things that a philosopher should talk about are the roles of children, slaves, and women, right? And very interesting. And he says this is, and you get some of this you'll see behind the scenes in the New Testament where it'll talk about children, slaves, and women, right? And one of the things that's interesting that Aristotle does is he really talks about the order of nature. Okay,
Mm.
that nature is created in such a way that this is the order things ought to be running. Okay. And one of the things you see in Paul, and a lot of people miss this, is when Paul starts talking about, okay, women, slaves, and children, he flips it on its head. He says it's not according to nature, but it's according to Christ. And when we see these relationships, how people relate in these various areas, women, slaves or servants and children, and then men, okay, when they're all relating, they ought not to relate according to nature, how it's always been done, but
Hmm.
how it is now according to Christ. And
Mm.
so this is like in right before Paul says, wives, submit to your husbands. He says, and people always fail to quote this part because there's a subject heading change right then, which the editors did for a reason. It says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ.
It does.
And I think that's the thesis. And then he has words about wives and children and servants and slaves, but that all those relationships should be understood, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, right? And
We just crossed that part out.
yeah, and I'll be honest, one of the reasons why do people do that? Because they want to retain their power.
Yep.
If I have to start relating to my wife and submitting to her out of reverence for Christ, well, that changes things. If I
Yep.
thought, if I was a chauvinist and thought like the man needed to run things, and now that would never work in my house. So that's just or,
The corner would be like, that's cute.
yeah, nice try. But like, and I think as Christians, we need to remember that we're not living according to some role, right? That it's
Mhm.
we're trying to, and this is why you kind of have different views when it comes to ethics. And one of is kind of a rule or role-based ethics. And I think there's some helpful ways to look at ethics in that way. But when it comes to relationships like the family, I think thinking about the virtues of, you have the cardinal moral virtues of prudence or practical wisdom. You have justice. you have courage, you know, and you have temperance or moderation, and then the theological virtues, you have faith, hope, and love. And if you think about your life like that, your relationships, how are you cultivating faith and hope and love and moderation and practical wisdom and justice and giving people their due? When you think about your relationships in that way, about cultivating habits that you become a more loving person, that's much better than thinking about what is this person I'm in relationship with, my spouse or partner, are they living according to the role that they ought to, and am I?
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think relationships work like that, and we tend to
Right.
box people in, and then people are too complex that they don't fit in that way, and so then it just adds to the problems.
Much more free way of living.
Yeah, and I think this is it, it, it's yeah, I think Christ calls us to freedom. We
Yeah.
have freedom in Christ, and so how can I promote freedom in my partner, in my kids? Um, Now it's freedom for, right? It's freedom to
Mm-hmm.
choose the good, to become a more virtuous person, more Christ-like person. It's not freedom from any obligations or responsibilities,
Right.
goals. Yeah.
So good. The onesie. You're talking about that onesie. Like, don't force them. Don't force them into it.
Yeah, every sermon I kind of got a little bit more hammed it up a little more by the 11 o'clock, you know, the onesie was
The onesie, man. Embrace their individuality, their
yes.
unique journey. Even it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
As the oldest sister, I need to apply this for my siblings as well. It's a word. It's a good word, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think it I just think it's tough because we want people to be who we expect them to be, who our ideas of them for are, and what does it mean to allow them the freedom to become who God has created and called them to be?
Right.
Um, and that can be very, very challenging. And I talk a big game, but you know, I'm trying to figure this out along the way, just like you and everybody else. Um, but I think that's the right thing to do.
Well, thanks for talking to me about it.
You bet, Morgan. It's been fun to close the distance. Oh, before people tune off, I wanted to highlight your Thursday Bible study that's done via Zoom, right?
Wednesday.
It's on
Wednesdays
Wednesday.
at 12 from 12 to 1 p.m. on Zoom
What are you
every
studying
week.
right now?
We're
What are you
studying
studying?
the book of Luke,
Okay,
just
Luke.
going
Okay,
through little by little.
yes, it'll take a while. That's great. And if people want to join you, how do they find out how to join on Zoom?
Well, you can email me at morgan@roswellpres.org, or you can go onto our website and search Connect Groups, and we'll be in there. We're the only fully virtual Bible study that I know of.
All right. And you have, I mean, it's cool. It's like a real diverse group. You have folks, did you say in Florida?
Yeah, we have people Florida, South Carolina. We have people in Roswell, obviously, all the way to Kennesaw. We have people who are homebound in or in like facilities. We have working moms of elementary schoolers. So it's really it's a good group.
I think that's a really cool opportunity for folks, you know, maybe on your lunch hour, um, I mean, and especially on a Wednesday, so that's midweek to kind of have a spiritual
Mhm.
community. I know it's to support each other, is kind of go through the journey of life, and I think always to meet people that are living much different lives and different ages and stages of life is really fun. So thank you for your leadership for that and convening it.
Thank you. Until next time.
All right, Morgan, I'll see you. Take care.
See ya.